I went on.
And to James.
That's my part. I would say after all this period of time, it's just good to be with the fellas again.
Most of the thing I miss is just that, like you say, most of the guys being together.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I was so grateful when the first day we met after 30 years, you know, in the basement.
That's right.
You know? That's what I miss mostly about it.
Just because.
The guys.
I mean, you know, we all got a little gray on us, and I just couldn't put it in the word. I couldn't even speak.
Oh man, it was like a return from the great beyond, actually, because it was just unbelievable. When you look around, everybody came together and we started playing just like we'd been playing all the time.
Unbelievable.
I just felt like, you know, I'm probably gonna cry here in a minute, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I did.
On the pop scene, you had the Beatles, and they were making a tradition, well, not a traditional, but a great change in the sound of music, the feel of music. And on the black scene, you had Motown. It was changing there. The whole music scene was going through a transition at that time. Rock and roll had its own little thing, and rhythm and blues, and yeah, that's right. It was the right time. Everything was, the timing was perfect.
But also the feel and the sound of them crossed over into the pop market, and then white America caught on to the sound, as well as black America, and it was. And to me, it was a real feel-good, positive thing.
Larry was shooting dice with us one day, and I couldn't stop hitting. Mickey Stevenson, Barry, and Brian Holland. We were shooting dice, and man, every time I'd come out with 11 or 7. And Barry said, he's done got too lucky. He said, let's play some poker. I said, well, I don't play poker, so I grabbed a fifth of that liquor and poured it in my thing and started drinking. I said, ha, I see you fellas. And then Brian said, he's trying to get his money back, ain't he?
You remember royalty period, all the producers got their royalty checks. All the hotels was renting out suites because everybody rented a suite and had their personal parties. Well, Barry had one over at his house. And Barry had a cigar box sitting up there full of $100 bills, man, packed. And he was taking all the bets. We beat Barry out of all the money he had on the table. When I was getting ready to go, Barry went upstairs and come back with 2 more shoeboxes. This company's successful.
That's right. They had Cadillacs, pink ones, blue, green, airplanes, all this kind of crap. I said, wait a minute, who's paying for all this stuff, you know? And then it dawned on me, I said, they must be making some money. You know?
Well, the money, I think scale was $24 for 3 tunes, 3 hours rather, 4 tunes when I left Motown, and I think they was getting around about $10 a side. And they was making $56 in 3 hours.
Give Joe a little more one.
Yeah.
The goofiest one was Jamerson tried to tell everybody that his name was Diego Diegerson. Diego in Spanish is James. So he thought, well, Jamerson, if it's James is Diego, then Jamerson is Diegerson.
Okay, his name was Soup. We named him Soup. Because one day we was planning 20 grand, so he said his wife gonna cook a big dinner for us. You know, so everybody all.
Well, that's what I thought.
So we go, everybody get off, we hungry, I don't know what. Go by his house and have they're gonna have a big layout out there for us. It wasn't, we didn't see nothing. Didn't smell nothing. So he went in there, got talked to his wife, come back to his 8 fellas. All we got is some soup. And we started calling him Soup.
What about what you and Pistol used to call each other?
Well, yeah, my name since my name is Uriel, and Pistol's name was Pistol. We come in the studio, I say, hey, Pistol, he say, hey, Urine. So Marvin Gaye lost so much money, they found out Jack was Had 3 dice.
I didn't have 3 dice. They were gambling when I went back there, so I'm looking at them shoot dice, so I made a bet. I saw him switch the dice, but didn't know what else it was. I saw the way he was betting, so I started betting the way he was betting. And I started winning. I said, I better quit before they discover it. Because he's switching dice real raggedy like. I laid back down up there, I went to sleep. Next thing I know, Marvin said, jackass, they beat me out all my money, and I think he has something to do with it. It was Eddie Bongo. So he went to Marvin and explained to him what really happened. So Marvin says, well, tell Jack to come on down to the room. I went down there and I got a shag carpet on the floor and a whole shoebox full of weed. Marvin says, Eddie Bongo told me what happened, so you don't have to go, he can stick with the two of them. You should have told me that they were cheating. I said, well, I wasn't going to do that. So Eddie said, you guys shake hands. I said, okay. So I reached over to shake hands with Marvin and knocked the box of weed into the shag carpet. I said, wait a minute, man, don't get mad. Let's go get a vacuum cleaner. What went on around us outside of playing the instruments?
Well, we had very little lives.
I was so tired in between, I didn't go home.
When we were in between takes, as an example, everybody's sitting in their own little cubicle, Pistol's over here in his cubicle, drum kits and everything sitting there, and a racetrack for him sitting on top of Tom Tom. Eddie Bongo's over here in his cubicle. I can look through the glass over him. He's reading a magazine, a nudie magazine, and then they count the song off, and the guys are still looking at him just playing. And never miss a beat, you know. They never miss a beat.
I listen to oldies.
Oldies, yeah.
And classical.
I listen to the news.
Yeah.
The news is more entertaining.
I look at TV now more so than I listen to the radio.
Motown. What music?
What music? Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
What music?
I listen to everything. Country and western.
Everybody sounds alike. The kids still say, oh, Daddy, we know you did this, we know you did that and everything. It's nothing to them because we don't care because they turn to the rap station, but this is what's happening now, Daddy. This is your music over here now, you know.
We could rap, and we didn't know you could get paid for that stuff. That's right.
Yeah,
We
well,
started rapping way back there. Sometimes what we call playing the dozens. But we could rap.
You feel like a fool, you know. You want to mention these tunes to somebody. If they're younger than you, they're not going to believe you anyway. You just can't make, my thought, you just can't make nobody believe it. What's the point of trying?
They don't even know you're alive. I'm sorry to say that.
I taught piano theory and composition, and I would do certain things and teach the kids certain things, and I said, well, oh yeah, I played on this record, I played on this record. The kids would look at me and they said, well, what are you doing in here teaching us? If you played on all those records, well, what are you doing in here teaching us?
Well, the first time I saw the movie, I thought it was great. Of course, I wanted to see more of myself, but it was good. Can't get enough of me.
In fact, I was the only one who went to New York for the Tribeca Film Festival. When I heard the sound, I damn near slipped out of my chair. I said, you gotta be kidding me.
Look here, Benny said to me before Earl Van Dyke found him when he died, he said, y'all gonna get y'all's. He said that to me, and this ain't no lie. He said, you're gonna get yours one day.
It's a family. I never had any brothers. These guys they're really like brothers. Al, Jack, Joe, I call him Yosef, and Eddie, and Earl, Babbitt, and Father Joe, Pops.
Each one of those guys that are gone now was a character within himself. Because there are times when I get flashbacks from these cats. I can hear Jameson just like he was sitting across that table. Bongo. No one sounded like Bongo. No matter how successful we get, no matter how much we achieve financially, we will always be anchored to reality by the sound of their voices telling us what we should do. He may have taken the bodies, but the spirits are still with us and will always be.
The way I feel about it, the greatest thing that's happening is Joe just said it. Robert didn't make it across the finish line.
Don't get emotional.
But neither did Jamerson.
Yeah.
Neither did Benny, neither did Eddie, neither Earl. And now Pistol's gone. Now, people are going to know about Earl. People are going to know more about Robert. People are going to know more about Jamerson. If we wouldn't have been able to do this, and there was no film, I mean, it's incredible, Alan. Man.
It's been a wonderful life. I've got wonderful children, wonderful grandchildren. I have relatively good health, and I know how to take care of business.
Well, I'm thankful too because I made it through this rat race, which we call the entertainment business.
I wouldn't change anything. That's for my person. I wouldn't change anything.
We are brothers. As the song said, we are family. And that's what, you know, we are brothers.
Well, here's to all you guys, man. And to James,
Hip, hip.
Benny, Earl, Robert, Eddie, and Pistol.
And I love every one of them. I love every one of you.
Same here.
Here's to you guys.
Each one of those guys that are gone now was a character within himself.
Benny Benjamin, James Jamerson, Eddie Bongo Brown, Earl Van Dyke, Robert White, Richard Pistol Allen, and Johnny Griffith. These are the Funk Brothers no longer with us, the missing beats and the greatest hit machine in musical history.
Knowing those guys was something special in my life.
Over 30 years before their film tribute, Benny Papa Zeta Benjamin was the first of the Funk Brothers to pass away. By the time he played his last beats in 1968, he was already considered a genius, the very backbeat of the Motown sound.
We had many gifted drummers and percussionists at Studio A. All of them would have to agree the undisputed king of rhythm was Benny Benjamin. Anytime Benny was on the set, 9 times out of 10, we knew it was going to be a hit.
The talent he had, I tried to almost clone Benny. You know, I studied him so hard.
But Benny's musical gift came with a heavy price, a lifelong addiction to alcohol and drugs.
If we can keep him on the bandstand, which sometimes we can't, he's out chasing corn liquor.
But he could play high. He could play high better than some of these guys can play that ain't high.
Benny's explosive drum sound defined Motown, and his dynamic personality earned him the love of the other brothers. But the glory and the recognition of his genius would be in a future he wasn't destined to see.
That was back in the beginning days when the money wasn't as plentiful. You know, recognition was non-existent. And a man with his talent, I can understand the frustration that he had.
In the late 60s, before he had reached the age of 40, Benny Benjamin's addictions took his life. In the heyday of the Motown hit machine, Studio A's core beat was silenced.
Now that's the guy that you had mixed emotions about. He'd get on your nerve, he'd worry you to death, but he was a well-loved guy. If you talk to Benny Benjamin a little while, you'll love him.
Equally esteemed for his maverick talent was virtuoso bassist James Jamerson.
James Jamerson, in one word, a genius.
Jamerson's intricate licks were revolutionary. They laid the foundation for the Motown sound and influenced generations of bassists. His talents were so vast, he humbled the very Funk Brothers themselves.
When I first played with Jamerson, I thought we were accompanying him. Everything was like a bass solo, and we played for him.
When we played, Benny hit a groove, I hit a groove, Jamerson was grooving, and I said he's a genius.
But Jamerson shared another similarity to his percussionist counterpart, Benny Benjamin, a self-destructive addiction to alcohol.
Eddie Bongo, Eddie and I went to see James when he was sick. I felt so bad because he was lying in bed, and Eddie Bongo, he came over to me and said, man, this guy's not gonna live past tomorrow.
Eddie's predictions were correct. Never recognized for his true genius and ravaged by alcohol, James Jamerson was a shell of his former self.
he managed to get out of the bed, you know, and grab me, you know, and hug me and cry. You know, I'll never forget this, you know. And he said he wanted me to give him some money, you know, to get him something to eat. Well, I knew better. See, I was saying he wanted that last drink, man. You know, like I said, I'll buy you all the food you want. You can eat right here, but I'm not gonna give you any money. But he understood. I got home the next day, and I got the call that he had passed.
James Jamerson may have had demons, but he also had dreams to be a great musician. He was more than that. In his short life, in addition to making dear friends and being a founding funk brother, he was a one-man musical legend.
Jamerson just was a guy that loved life, loved living to its fullest. That's the kind of guy he was. And he didn't know he was a genius. Had not a clue that he was a genius.
1983, the same year that James Jamerson died, also marked the loss of another funk brother, the group's comedian, Eddie Bongo Brown.
Bongo could imitate anybody in the band. He'd get our walk, our mannerisms, and he was a funny guy. He was beautiful.
Clown of all the whole bunch. He was the clown. He was definitely a clown, you know. His jokes, his talking about people's mama.
Eddie originally worked as Marvin Gaye's valet, but eventually drummed his way into Studio A with his original conga grooves. His uncanny ability to break the tension of long, exhausting recording sessions won him the love of his fellow funks.
Bongo was a very affable person, full of life, very effervescent, but he had his weaknesses like we all have.
Eddie Bongo Brown headed out to LA in the mid-70s, hoping to build on his career. But like many of the funks trying to recapture Motown's glory, his most successful days were behind him, lost deep in the grooves of the gold records he helped craft.
I would say that you're not here, but the guys that are left here are going to do the best that we can to make the world know that you were there.
1, 2, 3. In 1986, Alan Slutsky began his crusade to make the Funk Brothers movie. As much as he was battling their anonymity, he was also battling time.
I've been fighting a biological time clock for 16 years. And when I first started out, we had 10 of the original 13 Funk Brothers here.
But sadly, not all 10 would live to walk the red carpet at the premiere of Standing in the Shadows of Motown. The next funk brother to pass on was Earl Van Dyke, the passionate keyboardist who had earned the highest respect among the Funk Brothers.
We didn't have what you call a band leader in the studio, but everybody kind of looked up to him. Like they said, he was a leader.
When the session was really on the line, the producers, songwriters, and the musicians looked to Earl.
A forceful pianist who played on such hits as Ain't Too Proud to Beg and My Guy, Van Dyke earned the nickname Chunk of Funk. But his ability to corral the funks, especially the elusive Benny Benjamin and James Jamerson, also earned him the gratitude of Motown's management.
Me and Earl was in the service, you know, before we even came to Motown. I already knew Earl Van Dyke in 1946. And he inspired me to want to be better.
He found out early that he had cancer, and, you know, he wrote it out for some time.
Earl Van Dyke's death in 1992 was a big loss for the Funk Brothers. They had lost their leader and friend, knowing now that he wouldn't be able to take part in the film that would celebrate the Funk Brothers' lives.
I took Van Dyke, you know, just like he was a father to me. He's very, very loving guy, man, you know, and you can't help but return it.
Yet one more Funk brother would pass on before the production of the film began. Guitarist Robert White, seen in this 1993 interview.
I was just so delighted to do my passion and get paid for it.
Oh, my buddy Robert sat next to him numerous amount of times. Yeah, we miss him.
Amid volatile personalities like Jamerson and Benjamin, Robert White was a disciplined individual. His relaxed guitar strums melded perfectly with his personal quest for higher spirituality.
White, you know, he's classy. He's classy, you know, he's Juilliard, whatever you might want to say, you know. he didn't clown around too much.
Although we didn't get to participate in the filming of the movie, by the time Robert White died in 1994, he at least knew the film was becoming a reality, that all his hard work would be documented in a major motion picture celebrating his mastery.
It's just a delight that someone has taken an interest to introduce us as individuals to our fans. Finally, people are going to see who we really are.
In the winter of 2000, filming of Standing in the Shadows of Motown began. One of the founding drummers of the Funks, Richard Pistol Allen, was already very sick at the time, yet overjoyed that he had survived long enough to see the tribute film come together.
Pistol, that was my heart. Yeah, you know, we were so close together. Very beautiful guy, talent guy.
Pistol was a kind person. He's a friendly person, a warm person.
When Earl passed away, we were all sitting around a table. Pistol was sitting to the left of me, and he kissed me on the cheek. And I could never forget that. Never.
In this rare footage of that 1994 wake, Pistol talks about the subtle differences in the drumming styles of the Motown percussionists.
To identify the drummer style in Motown, to identify you got to hear. And identify Benny, do that thing. Identify me, simple. That's Motown.
The chatty, well-loved drummer Sticks was silenced in June of 2002. But not until after filming of the movie was complete. He went with the satisfaction of knowing he would finally be immortalized.
He was sick through the whole filming, and he just, if you look at him on the film, he was in heaven. He was in heaven already.
In November of 2002, Standing in the Shadows of Motown was released. After all the years, all the hits, the surviving Funk Brothers basked in the glory of fame and recognition. No one enjoyed it more than keyboardist Johnny Griffith.
There's a lot of love between me and the guys. When Al came up with the idea and said, it's going to happen, I said, well, you count me in.
Along with the remaining Funk Brothers, Johnny attended the premieres and the concerts, thrilled at the rush of fame hitting him so late in life. But then, in the middle of the celebration, tragedy struck.
We were in Detroit. I was getting ready for the premiere.
He was not feeling well for a while.
I think Jack called me about 11 o'clock Sunday morning. He was on the way to the hospital. And I said, is he okay? And he said, no, he's passed away.
Well, I didn't say nothing for 3 or 4 minutes, just thinking, you know, could it be a mistake? And then I knew Johnny was sick.
It was so quick, you still, I can't believe it. I can't comprehend that he's gone.
Like, you know, like tonight, we talking and laughing and everything. We getting up in the morning to go do a shoot, and Johnny can't come. Johnny's no longer with us.
It was just weeks before, as the Funk Brothers dined, readying for the release of the film, that they speculated on such a loss. Now the unthinkable had happened.
I don't know. I would feel worse than I ever did in my life if something would happen to one of the rest of the guys right now. But I don't think I could. It could happen.
I'm sure Johnny would want us to go on.
We want him to know that he's right there with us.
And we don't control anything. Our fates are in the hands of someone else. And that we'll carry on the name of the Funk Brothers, because he said, I'm a Funk Brother forever. And he is a Funk Brother forever.
We'll continue on. His name is in the history just as much as ours, because he did finish the picture.
Want him to know that we're going out there, and anything we do is going to be for him as well as all the other guys.
Motown's hits play eternal on our radios and in our hearts. Now the men who played those hits have their piece of eternity. And for Benny, James, Eddie, Earl, Robert, Pistol, and Johnny, it was all they ever wanted in the first place.
When you say what about the ones that are not here, we're hurting, but we don't dwell on it. We continue on, we talk like they're not really gone.
We love them to death. Yeah, they'll always be with us.
On behalf of the city, we congratulate the Funk Brothers.
I love it, all the attention.
I really love what's going on, you know.
It's a dream now. I'm still dreaming too.
I'm not sure if it's hit me yet.
It's fantastic.
It feels fabulous to finally get our profits.
Standing in the Shadows of Motown was released in November of 2002, over 35 years after Motown scored its earliest hits. With the release of the film came a deluge of publicity for the Funk Brothers, a group of men who had long since given up on their hopes for a shot at the spotlight.
When I semi-retired, I just laid back and said, well, this is it.
We always thought, well, hey, we're going to go move to Florida, or we're going to hang out on the beach and everything, you know. We're going to retire.
But a remarkable series of events brought Uriel, Jack, Johnny, Pistol, Joe Hunter, Joe Messina, Bob, and Eddie out of obscurity. Only through fate did they get a taste of the kind of fame that for years had only been reaped on the vocalists of the songs they styled.
They're like unsung heroes, sort of, and it must be just amazing to have it finally happen.
After a while, that hits you every day. And then I start practicing signing my autograph. I said, this is next. After this, boy, this is going to be autograph time.
Back in Detroit in the 60s, the Funk Brothers weren't looking for glory. They were studio musicians looking to make a living. What they didn't realize at the time was that they were also making a legend.
We weren't really interested in that at the time. It was just, well, number one, it was a job, and number two, it was a chance of expression.
Motown's glory era eventually wound down. But while the Funk Brothers went away, the hits never did. The legacy and glory of the Motown sound had somehow evaded the Funk Brothers, the very musicians who had created that sound.
I can only speak for myself. I was just so delighted to do my passion and get paid for it.
But I think they need to know the names of the Funk Brothers that were on that music. That's what I think.
That might never have happened if it weren't for Alan Slutsky, a musician researching the Motown sound. When he met James Jamerson's widow in 1986, he learned the untold plight of the Funks.
I just related to their story of, the fact that they had given so much to the world and got nothing back.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2.
Alan met the rest of the Funk Brothers and became friendly with them. He wrote a book about them called Standing in the Shadows of Motown and introduced them to a filmmaker friend of his named Paul Justman.
I realized that these men had played on what I call the soundtrack of my life, and I didn't know who they were, and that blew my mind.
Alan Slutsky's fascination with the unsung Motown masters grew into an obsession. He made it his life's work and exhausted his life savings to get a film made about the Funk Brothers.
I guess everybody has a crusade somewhere in their life that they pick up for, maybe a charity, maybe whatever, and this is the one I picked.
Alan, being the type of person he is, we were convinced that he had an opportunity because he was so enthusiastic, had a concept. We sucked us right on in.
As time was going by, the excitement and the enthusiasm kind of started to dwindle, and we were wondering if it was ever going to happen.
But Alan's resolve was relentless. And in 2000, principal photography was finally about to begin on the Funk Brothers movie, with Paul Justman directing. Getting ready for production, the old Soul Brothers reunited after decades of not seeing each other.
I'm Joe Hunter. Joe Hunter.
The The men who were sitting retired on their porches were now back in the studio, sitting behind their instruments.
It was real scary at first, you know, because when we come in the first day of rehearsal, man, I was all nervous. I was saying to myself, man, this is going to sound like mess.
When the band got together to play, it just clicked right away. Everything gelled.
I was surprised. After a couple of days, it was something to listen to, you know.
Filming took place over the course of 6 weeks, and another 6 months later, each brother received a video copy of the movie and an itinerary of their publicity tour schedule.
Just kept looking at it, you know, over and over and over.
Both times I looked at it to believe, you know, in order to convince me that it was real.
To their amazement, before they knew it, the Motown Masters were back on the road. Only this time, they were the headliners.
We're talking to each other, say, is this real? To make sure that what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling is this not me. And they were saying the same thing that I was saying.
I hope it means that there's some redemption, that there's some victory, that there's some joy, that there's... I know they enjoyed making the film.
Now I'm getting my face to go with the music. Before it was just the music out there, you know.
The men in the shadows were now in the sun. They were now being interviewed, swarmed by the press, recognized for their genius, and revered by a new generation. And they were having the time of their lives.
But you know what? I love it. I do. I'm ready for it. And I know these guys are.
We know this didn't have to happen. And so we're so appreciative of what happened.
Right now, I'm up on top. Whatever you name, I'm on top of it.
The beautiful part about the Funk Brothers is that these guys are here. These guys are here to see this film come to life.
Against all odds, after years of being neglected, the Funk Brothers' legacy is now assured. No longer will music lovers ignore the sound that gives Motown its very soul. And for the men whose music has been the soundtrack of our lives, that heartbeat of recognition is the sweetest sound of them all.
I'm going to enjoy it. My wife's going to enjoy it. And whatever happens, it's a wonderful feeling, man.
If you stay up late, you know, playing the instruments like that, then it's hard for her to get up. But she doesn't want to miss school. She would be the first one up. She set her own clock. And when the clock go out, she'd be so tired, and you know, I'm the one here. There you are. That's what I'm doing.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I got that from you at the party. I got that from Daddy at the party. I can do any. My mom said, as long as you have the power to do it, then you can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Just like my dad, when he was, he started making money when he was 12 years old, playing the drums. I don't believe that he'll be 70 when I'm 12.
You want to see this, Michelle? Huh?
No.
Look, huh? That's here. This is very important. Michelle? Yeah?
Jared, don't think about it. Don't. Is that Mama?
Yes, that's Mama. You want to hold it right there? That's all the pounds out. You got a whole. You got a lot of pictures of Mama.
Let's say that.
Oh, this is in the backyard. I just wanted to be happy and be a free child, and just grow up and be just like Mama, be what she want to be, because she's got so many good things and good people, you know, ahead of her, and there's no way she can go wrong.
My dad taught me the stuff that he could, because my mom didn't know how to play drums really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
She just taught me how to do, like the stuff with Baby Love, the notes of it, because she was really, really good at music. Let me show you what I'm trying to say. She would show me how to do the stuff like this.
To read the music?
Yeah. But ever since my mom has been deceased, I've been going down there to get music lessons, but I haven't been there in the past few weeks because it's pretty dark. So I'm gonna start back in the summer when it gets light around, when it gets dark around 9 o'clock. Because my lessons start at 7:45 or 8. So.
And so I let her skate, and I stick to playing the drums and cleaning the house here.
Yule would use sometimes if we couldn't find Benny. And then Pistol played a shuffle beat better than anyone. So we would call him, if we wanted a shuffle beat, we would call Pistol Pete.
Like which songs would those?
Well, like Heat Wave for one, the main one of the main ones I could think of. Heat Wave. Then there was
like say on Bernadette would be.
what? No, Bernadette. I believe Benny played Bernadette.
That was Benny and Jamerson.
Come and Get These Memories, I think Pistol played on.
Right. Although Pistol's style was a lot different than Benny Benjamin's style. Pistol was masterful at the shuffle. I mean, I know no one better. As a matter of fact, I don't personally know anyone as good. I mean, he's just lit up. I mean, when he started getting his shuffle groove, he just lit up. I mean, he just felt.
He gets all into it, right?
You know.
You really want the truth about that? Okay, in Philadelphia at that time, there were no record companies when I started. It was early on in the 50s, without me telling my age. It was in the 50s. And it was a very bleak outlook for me because I came up in the inner city and it was either gangs or whatever else you wanted to do, you know. In fact, I had the opportunity to once play basketball with Wilt Chamberlain. Only one time because they realized he was going to be a star and they didn't want us to break him up because we played on concrete, he played on a parquet floor. So we tried to cripple him. But they stopped him from playing with us, and so I love basketball, so I had to find something else. And so one night, and this is the truth, one night when I went to bed, I asked God to take me out of that. And I asked him to make me something other than being with the gangs. And I said, I don't care what you pick. Just don't make me one of the gang. And so what happened, I don't know how it led into music, but it became a part of me some kind of way. I started getting interested in music. And I followed that. I didn't follow it because I thought God directed me there, but I kind of liked it. So I was going for what I liked. Obviously, God directed me there and answered my prayer. And he made me a musician. And I went to school and I studied and everything and went on the road with bands. And then they kept leading me into, kept growing. The activities in the bands in Philly were getting slim, so I started going on the road. But the only group that was out of Philadelphia was recording at the time was Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells. They were recorded in a studio on Broad Street. A Buick dealer had a studio in the bottom of his dealership. And Patti LaBelle and them used to go downstairs in the dealership and overdub. But that was the only musical record company, as you would say, existing at that time. But that wasn't enough to support all the musicians that were there, so I went on the road. And that's how I ended up at Motown, getting out of Philadelphia because there was nothing happening. And fortunately for me, but then after I left, you had the Gamble and the Huffs.
Did the Vibes, why did that instrument just happen?
Well, my mother used to send me to a place called the Earl Theater, because she was trying to elevate my consciousness, getting away from the gangs. And they used to have stage shows at this place called the Earl Theater. And I used to go there and see Lionel Hampton. I still haven't seen a pair of Vibes as pretty as the ones that Hamp played at the time because they looked all gold and everything. And I think I was like 12 years old. And I used to look at those, you know, they would lower the house lights and everything, because at that time they played a movie first, they had a comedian, and then a stage show. Well, wasn't that something for about $3? I guess it might have been cheaper, but that was great at that time. And they would roll the vibes out, then the curtain would open, and I see those gold vibes, and I knew I was hooked. God knows I was hooked. And he would play Midnight Sun. I can't even play it, only because I don't have mallets. But he played Midnight Sun, and I was hooked for life. I mean, that instrument, I just loved the sound of it. And then when I started playing it myself, I knew why he played it, because you can express every emotion that you might go through, anger or pain or love or whatever. You can love this instrument, and it brings all of those emotions out effortlessly, you know. And so that's how I got on the vibes, and I never left, you know. I had the opportunity of meeting my idol, Milt Jackson, through a mutual friend. We were in California 10 years ago. And we were introduced, and I told Milt, I said, man, I've loved you playing all my life. I said, I know I'll never be as good as you, but I'm in the studio and I'm gonna stay there. He said, oh, he was humble. He said, oh, no, man. You know, you can play. I've heard your stuff through the years and everything. So he says, you know, just like I like to play pool. He says, I'm pretty good at it. He should have never said that, because I was better than good. I'm the only one probably in the Motown that could challenge Norman Whitfield, and he's a Minnesota Fats, really. So what happened, so I took Milt Jackson to this pool hall on Sunset Boulevard. I beat his brains out up in there. I mean, let me tell you, I got a picture to prove it. I got Milt hanging on a cue stick like this, and I was propping him up, because I beat him, he couldn't stand hardly. And so I said, now, I'll let you beat me on pool when you retire from playing vibes. Well, obviously he didn't retire from playing vibes, so I keep beating his ass in pool. But that's the way that happened. I was fortunate enough to run into great musicians coming through Philadelphia, inspiration. Max Roach used to stay across the street from me when he played Philly, on the street that I lived on. John Coltrane lived around the corner from me. Philly Joe Jones used to come to my uncle's house, who was a bass player. So I had musicians all in my family, you know. And so I guess it was inevitable that I would drift off into music. And this is my life. And then I had the ultimate blessing of meeting the Funk Brothers. And that was it, you know. No. I would like to think I was.
If he was a kid, we all was a kid.
Yeah, really. No, when I first had my experience at the Chit Chat, I was a much younger man. But I acted like a kid because it was all new to me. This type of musician was different than what I was accustomed to. I was used to being on the road, living out of your suitcase. Coming here, you know, you actually had a place to live and had the greatest musicians in the world, and I recognized that, and it was just more fun. But it was just a different feeling in the city. The city was different. For one thing, the street wasn't as big.
Grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
What kind of family?
Well, there was had two brothers and a sister, and my parents were both singers. They sang gypsy music, and I remember constantly listening to that music as I grew up. And then my parents, my father was, being that he was really into music, he bought me an upright bass, and I started to do a lot of rehearsing. I started to take some lessons, classical lessons. And fortunately, I had a really great teacher, which led to, there was in Pittsburgh, they had something called the Pittsburgh Symphony Junior, which they would pick the best guys out of the high schools around town, the best musicians. And I was fortunate to be part of that for 3 years. But while I was part of that and studying for the classical, I was also in the band in high school. And in the band was a sax player friend of mine, a black saxophone player that came up to me one day and he said, Bob, he said, how would you like to work with me a couple weekends down at a club? I said, club? I'm only like 15 years old or something. I said, he said, don't worry about that. He said, just come on down. So I get my upright bass, I go into the club, and here he is wearing a turban, and he is playing his butt out, and I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just up there playing upright bass, and I'm having a great time. Nobody's saying anything about my age or anything. And all of a sudden I'm saying, man, this is really great. It just, it evolved to where at the end of my high school, I got a musical scholarship, but that year my father had passed on, and I decided to work to help the family out. And in Pittsburgh, if you worked a regular day job, I mean, you couldn't make any money. I mean, so I had some relatives in Detroit, and I had an uncle. He said, man, come on up here, man, you can make 3 times as much money. And okay, not thinking about music when I came up. And I came to Detroit. I worked for a construction company for a couple years, and in the meantime, in that course of period, I went back, got my bass, came up to Detroit, and started meeting some of the local musicians around town. And I met Joe Hunter, of all guys, and sat in, played with Joe, and then Joe would say, you know, Bob, he says, I have a friend down here, maybe you'd be interested in doing some recording sessions. And at that time, it was Harry Balk. And Harry had been producing quite a few acts, and Joe introduced me to him. And I was also in the group at that time called the Royal Tones. Well, you know, when the first records come out, you didn't know who you were listening to because for not only the first records, for the, I don't know how many records after that, there never were any credits. And I was working around Detroit for 4 or 5 years. Luckily, I had the opportunity to work with the other funk brothers, and they would tell me who was playing there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known. I mean, when I first became aware of him was when I first became aware of that style of the Motown sound, the bass, the whole conglomerate of spiritual interaction that just came right at you and bam, hit you. And it was uplifting, spiritual, uplifting thing. It's hard to explain. I don't feel that when I listen to music now, but that's another story. There was a club in Detroit where a lot of celebrities would come, football players and just people coming in town where most of the bands played. And I happened to be playing there one night when a guy approached me, said, you know, he says, do you ever think about wrestling? I said, what am I going to wrestle for? You know, I'm a musician, right? He said, no, man. He said, you should really think about it, you know. He gave me his card, and I just put it in my pocket and walked away. Well, something happened in Detroit when some of the key producers and arrangers started drifting out. And they were starting to go to the West Coast or New York area. And I had studied a little bit. I had some friends that showed me a few things about wrestling, but I found this card and I called this guy up and I said, you know, I think I want to try this. You know, when you're a musician too, your wife's always saying, well, when are you going to get a job? You know? So I said, all right, I'm going to get a job. I'm going out and I'm going to be a wrestler. Again, my wife said, oh, yeah, okay, you're crazy. Yeah, okay. A lot of it was well, you be there kind of stuff. You know what I'm talking about? And it's a fun thing. But what happened was, I started to do a few things, and I heard about another wrestling match where a guy bit another guy's ear off. I thought, wait a minute, he bit his ear off. If I get my ear off, I'm not going to play no music, man. And then I started thinking about my hands. You know, maybe you're going to hurt your hands or whatever. Once I started working at Motown, the first session I did there was We Can Work It Out, Stevie Wonder. And then Ardeen Taylor cut a record called Indiana Wants Me. Then I did Signed, Sealed, Delivered. I did Ball of Confusion, War, Masterpiece, Touch Me in the Morning. Oh boy, Bonham. It's funny you're asking. You can't remember. You did so many sessions. When I left Motown for over 20 years, I pursued my career, and Motown never gave the musicians no gold records, for example. So if you come to my house now, you're going to see a wall full of gold records. In fact, there's so many walls, my wife's ready to kick me out of the house. She says, "What this is, it ain't a house anymore." But none of them. That was after I left Motown. But I'm going to tell you the truth. Nobody cares. All they care about is Motown. What about Motown? Well, wait a minute. What about Motown? What about Motown? What about Motown? It's amazing. It's incredible. Oh, when I went into like East Coast. Well, you know, even in Detroit, there was things happening outside of Motown. But when I went to the East Coast, Midnight Train to Georgia, Gladys Knight. Then came you, Dionne Warwick and the Spinners, and then quite a few Spinner hits, Rubber Band Man, Games People Play. Boy, I can't even remember. There was so many of them there. Just Don't Want to Be Lonely, Main Ingredient, Jim Croce. I can't even think of the song now. I only did one session for this guy, and it was No, it wasn't Time in the Bottle. It was one of the up tempos. I Got a Name. And also, the drummer on all those sessions was from Andrew Smith, who was also from Motown. Then I started working for. I did quite a few tunes with Barry Manilow. I worked with Frank Sinatra. I did 2 Jimi Hendrix albums, Alice Cooper. I mean.
And from classics, I went into jazz. I needed a challenge. I could play just about anything classical. Before I became of age, I was playing in the clubs because my father used to tell me I was too lazy to work, so he said, well, you might as well play music. You know, he didn't think of music as being a job. Sarah Vaughan was interesting, very interesting, because she played piano better than I did. So I learned a great deal from her, and Dinah Washington. But Dinah was quite interesting. She played good piano. In those days, all those singers played good piano, you know, so you couldn't shuck and jive with them. They knew what you were doing. They knew what they wanted. So there again was another challenge and the pressure that I just thrived on that, you know. But I worked with her. We did a tour all up in Vancouver, BC, and all on that Alberta Canadian circuit on down through to California.
Do you remember any of the tunes she used to play?
Oh, well, this time she had this hit, This Bitter Earth. I know everybody probably knows that. And what was the other one she had? Can't think of the other one right now. Where, When. Well, yeah. But the main one, which I called hell with until I really learned it right, was This Bitter Earth. Because it sounded like it was going one way, and finally one day, she said, come here. She said, now watch what I'm doing. And she showed me the song. I said, oh, that's what you're doing? She said, yeah. I said, okay. So I made a few little notes and wrote it down, then I learned the song. They wanted to make me their first jazz artist on the Motown label. They were gonna form another label, jazz. They just called it J-A-Z-Z. So they just gave me the studio and told me, do what you wanna do, and we'll see what we come up with. So I used to go in at night from about 2 in the morning and worked about 6 in the morning with my trio, and we put the album together. And then everybody loved it, so I was their first jazz release.
Put a bit of beat into the goose. Well, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Joe Hunter. What are y'all laughing about? I am Joe Hunter.
reminded me of Fred Sanford when you said that. You said,
Are you sure you're Joe Hunter?
Yeah, Elizabeth, I'm coming back.
He was my introduction to the R&B record scene, and he was one of the originators of the R&B syndrome, but it wasn't really R&B. It was a different kind of sound, and that's what was fascinating to me because I had never played. I either play classics, straight jazz, or blues. Because when I worked with Johnny Lee Hooker and all those guys, it was just straight blues, and you didn't have to worry about form or anything. You just play the blues, and Johnny Lee would adjust this little thing on his top of his guitar, and you in another key, and we still play the same blues that we played in the last key. So, but with Joe's style was a little unique in a sense where it had the little bluesy, funky thing, and it was interesting. You know, that's why I used to ask him. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, don't worry about it. Just watch what I'm doing. Just when it's your turn, just play." I said, "But what?" He said, "You'll hear it as you move on." So I did. I learned to hear it, and then, you know, then I noticed. Then the singers started to adjust to what we were playing. So that's where it developed. So when he left, I took over, and I was the main pianist, and they worked the hell out of me. I didn't know it was that much work and doing studio work, you know.
How did I know Joe? From Hastings Street. Do you know about Hastings Street? This I met him at Hastings Street. Black Bottom, that's where I met him at.
Well, Joe Weaver always kept a crowd of people around him. He was one of the most popular bands around here at that time. He played a lot of blues, and they could play other stuff too. But I thought Joe had a great band because I said, I want to be just like him. He's sort of a mentor, you know what I mean? He had all the girls hanging around him and everything. I tried to steal him. And you caught me one time at the Royal Hotel. What's it, Hotel on the Boulevard?
Yeah, the Royal.
And there he was up in an apartment hollering out my name, and I just got married. And he said, "Johanna, Johanna!" And man, I was trying to duck. Joe really embarrassed me.
But you know, this is one of the greatest pianos that came out of the city of Detroit, period, Johanna. He have been around so long and he got so much talent. He deserved so much more than what he's getting right now. I'm telling you from my heart. He's a legend, this man right here.
When I started playing with a fellow named Henry Crosby. We call him Hank Crosby. And we went to school together, and he was already blowing clarinet, so I told the conductor I'd like to blow clarinet, you know. So I caught up with him, you know. It didn't take me about 6 months. I had the clarinet every place I went, the clarinet went. And I finally learned to play clarinet and was promoted to the top orchestra, along with the guys that had been playing it ever since they were 6 years old. And I was doing that more so than piano. I didn't start playing piano until, really professionally, until later. I played at a place called Sonny Wilson's because my reading ability was good then, and they needed somebody to play Madeline Green's tunes, and I was only 16 at that time. And they hired me at Sonny Wilson's, but I couldn't sit with the drinkers. And there was a great heavyweight champion of the world sitting over about 2 tables from me, Joe Louis. And I said, I got to be good. I got nervous when I saw Joe. But I did the job, and they said, well done, you know. And that's the way I started, really. That's the Midnighters. That's that group I've heard about. So when I got up there, I fitted in so well until Hank Ballard ran over there, and they had another little 3-minute meeting and said, hey, do you want this job? And told me what it was about and so forth. I says, let me talk to Arishmo. I says, you in here rehearsing with him? He said, man, he says, this ain't my type of thing anyway. I want to play jazz. I don't like what I'm playing. It's just a thing. He says, I wouldn't feel offended if you take the job. So I took the job, you know, and went out for about 1.5 years, a little more, with the Midnighters. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun, really. It was foundation. I'd never really been over the states like that, but we traveled all across the United States at that particular time. And
What kind of music was that?
Well, I don't know. What would you call it? Blues, rock and roll? What was that kind of stuff?
I call it the original R&B.
Yeah, okay.
That's where some of the original R&B came from.
Yeah, because we bumped into Little Richard, too.
Yeah, Little Richard, yeah.
I used to stand up and play the piano all the time. I never, very seldom sit down.
I did an album with him.
You know, I was like a show. That's how I learned how to do the splits. I think one day I must have slid on a banana peeling or something, and Hank expected that.
Okay, we're here sitting at Downriver Lounge. It used to be Chappie's Lounge. Chappie's Lounge was one of the main 3 clubs that we worked in Detroit. It was Chappie's, Chit Chat, and the 20 Grand. That was our main gigs with the Funk Brothers. This bar here I was at the first band that played in this building. I was with the first band. That was Rip Reynolds. And then I went from Rip Reynolds to Joe Weaver. That was here also. That was a blues. And then after Rip played with was between like Bobby Cook and Earl. And then eventually I went all the way with Earl.
Chappie was like a second father. Yeah, we played here on Monday nights. What they had Blue Monday nights, and generally during that time I was also working with Aretha Franklin and the Spinners. And I began to really take a liking to Ewell because he was very one of the few drummers that could work with an organ trio. And what I really liked about him was his attitude, and he had good syncopation with the music. I met Ewell actually through my cousins. They knew Ewell. And this goes back in the 50s. And I met him then. And eventually we became real good friends. And after Earl had taken sick, when he wasn't on his job, I guess Ewell would recommend me to Earl, and Earl would call me to take his place at various clubs.
Well, I got into Motown through Marvin Gaye and Earl Van Dyke both, because I had started working on the road with Marvin, and every time when we come in town off the road every now and then, I would get a session every now and then. And then in '63, that's when I started working with Earl a little bit, and through Earl and Marvin, that's how I kind of worked my way into the studio. But then another thing is, this is the first place where I met Benny Benjamin, because I lived out in this area. Benny Benjamin was playing up here with Joe Weaver, and I come in here one time on a Blue Monday, and Benny Benjamin was playing with Joe Weaver, and I admired his playing so much. At that time, I was just getting into drums, and when I saw Benny, that just inspired me to just really go into it wholly.
Yeah, I met a friend, an accordion player, a friend of mine, and he mentioned something about learning your scales and chords. So I did that, and it worked out for me.
Did you have a teacher?
No, just the one accordion player. He told me to do that.
And did you get a book?
I did have a book, a Mel Bay book. Taught myself from that book.
And what was did you join a band? Did you become part of a band?
Oh, I started to play around town with a few guys, yeah. You'd get one job a year. Next thing you know, you have 2, then 3, and then after a while, it starts to mount up, which was nice. And you get a little recognition around town.
And that led up to like a job with Soupy Sales, which was that was television.
Yeah, I end up on the night show with Soupy Sales.
And Eddie traveled with the Four Tops for a while, and they had the pleasure of reproducing that sound on stage. And I think he's retired from working with them now, but that was one of the biggest thrills, because once in a while they'd lend him to us, and we get the right guitar sounds on stage, live.
My step-uncle, which we call him Papa, he was the father of many. I think it was about 15 living in one house, maybe more. And he bought the crew a guitar, and we all learned how to play the guitar, the bigger boys, and a couple of us were smaller. As soon as the big guys would put the guitar down, the little one would pick it up, and the guitar never sat still. Even 2 of the girls learned how to play guitar. With Inez and Rosalie, I'm gonna call their name, They learned how to play the guitar. In fact, they were better than I were, they were a little bit older than I. And these two girls, they learned how to play the guitar and just were much better than I did. But I did learn eventually. I caught up with them and kind of like sneak by a little bit, you know. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. This old shack here is where I was allowed to come and play some music with a couple of older gentlemen. I played one guitar and one gentleman played another guitar, which older man, and Mr. Chairs played the fiddle. I think I was 10. And we always started around 7 o'clock. This used to be a house party place here, you know, like the owners would put all the furniture in one room, one bedroom or something like that, you know, and have all this open space for dancing and making music. It started around 7, but no later than 10, I had to get out of there, you know. It gets very rough. After the guys start drinking a bit heavy, it would be 2 or 3 fights around, you know. I mean, friends also. Fights, you know, and the next day, you know, they hugging each other.
He came from where he was born in Pritchard, Alabama, and that was the outskirts of the town of Mobile. But he was my first cousin. His mother married my uncle. Yeah.
How did Benny get into drumming?
With 2 spoons and a fork. Forks, you know, ticky, 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 ticky. You remember they used to do that joke with it?
Ham bone.
Ham bone. That's how he got into drumming. Benny could play jazz, he could play rock, he could play blues, he could play anything. And Benny could make up a sound of his own. He could take a blues beat and put it in a jazz beat.
Bongo Eddie, he could imitate anybody's walk. He would come in the studio and say, "Who is this?" And he'd start walking and people would pass out because they know exactly who it was. And he had expressions. And they played the dozens, you know. He played the dozens better than anybody on the planet. Nobody got in a dozens game with Eddie Brown. I think Brown was probably the closest to the street of any of the players. He lived on 12th Street right there where the riot happened. He knew what was going on. He was a decent human being, but he just happened to be born in that neighborhood, and he had that sort of humor. And we enjoyed Eddie Brown thoroughly.
He liked to do practical jokes, and he had this invisible man that he walked around the house and played the invisible person for a long time. And he loved to make jokes. He liked to crack jokes on you. Food and playing with the children was his joy. You know, halitosis and things, running them down the steps and running over the house and with bad breath. He loved to do that with
My dad loves to make goulashes, all kind of mixtures of rice with your tomatoes and your onions, bell peppers, and exotic meals. What is the escargot, the snails? He'll try to get you to eat. I couldn't handle it. So we'll run and hide from him. All the kids would run and hide.
He loved cooking, loved seafood. He would put crabs in a big pot, and he would say, you know, where they try to climb out of the pot when they were cooking. So he had a weird sense of humor in that way, but he was an excellent cook, though.
James Jamerson. Boy, I'll tell you one thing about James. He was a little guy, but you didn't want to mess with him. Now, we had become real close friends, and he told me a story one time about him and Dennis Coffey, who was another Motown guitarist, playing a late night gig. And after the gig, they came out into the parking lot to get their cars, and they were approached by a stranger, and the guy pulled a gun on them and robbed their wallets. Well, James was really angry. Now, James had carried a small fountain pen gun, and he said to Dennis, "I'm going to get this guy." Now, one thing about James is he had bad feet. But I don't know, somehow, bad feet and all, he cut through a back alley and he caught up with this guy, put that fountain pen on his head, and said, "Give me the wallets back. And not only that, give me your wallet." So James ended up robbing the robber. I'll tell you, man, he was nobody to mess with.
They was asking what was the situation like without Benny and Jamerson. You ever tried to bake a cake without sugar? Huh? You know.
No, I don't bake.
All right, see, but that's what you could say about them too.
He played from charts sometimes, but most time he would play what he felt a lot of times that I was in the studio. There would be chord charts written out. Sometimes there were notes, and every now and then he would just change it up and take the chart, and there it goes.
You would have to see the guys in action. I mean, Robert and Earl and Ural and all of them at the club at 20 grand and what have you, they had something that it would tickle me, honest to goodness, their head. Everyone had their own thing. James, of course, had his little smirk. The guys will tell you he was sort of like Iceman playing the bass and doing the hook with his finger playing the bass. You know, he played the bass with one finger. But he had a little smirk that would be on his face for the most part, but there was one head would be up and the other one would be down to the side, and so they had when they had a true groove going, I mean, you know, it was just, they gelled. What can I say? They were just the greatest musicians that ever been, in my book.
California was different. It was different musically, you know, there was more things in the business that some people by that time, music had changed, and producers knew exactly what they wanted, and you know, just play this part, and he was accustomed to being him instead of somebody else. Playing a part was not him, and I believe that that kind of hurt him because he was always one to express himself.
When I first heard James Jamerson, I said, I'm gonna stick with the drums.
Yeah.
You know, because that was too deep.
Yeah.
It was too deep. I didn't start trying to play till much later, you know, when I could, you know, try to figure something out. I was like, but it affected me in a way that nothing else has, you know, since.
Yeah.
You know, it's just.
Bucci, talk about, beginning by saying when I first
When I first heard Reach Out, man, that was like, you know, well, first of all, I said to myself, as soon as I heard it, it was like, uh-oh, here comes another one. You know, another one I'm going to have to attempt to try to learn, you know. And, I mean, they just kept kicking them out so, I mean, you know, so regularly, you know, you didn't even have time to learn the last one that was, you know.
Right.
It's like, man, so I never really got a chance to learn note for note now one of them. And Reach Out, man, I mean, I was scuffling like a mug, you know. And I started to just throw the bass down and grab the guitar. Actually, I did that, you know, for I'd say about 3 months. And my brother was playing guitar so good, I had to jump back on bass, man. So I couldn't win for losing, man. James Jamerson was kicking me in the face in one of them. Then my brother with the guitar, I was like, okay, I got to fit in here somewhere.
I think most people don't realize, just like right now, the rappers and stuff, they figure to give me more bass and drum. They realize what makes the groove now. Before, no one knew. They figure, oh, bass and the guitar, they used to get it confused, oh, drums. And then when disco came along, they knew, okay, here's the beat. But then bass is like a spiritual thing. That was the pulse of the music that made you, okay, move differently. You can stomp your feet, but bass made you sway. You know, my dad always said that, you know, bass was like a spiritual instrument.
I don't know exactly where Earl grew up, but I know he went to Miller High School here in Detroit. And Earl and I was in the Army Air Force at that time. The Air Force hadn't separated from the Army, and he volunteered and got in there when he was 17. I don't know how. I got in at 18. And Earl was in the band when I got there, and I was sent from Colorado, Lowry Field, from a clerk typist with my clarinet. They knew I was a musician, and I blew clarinet in the band. And me and Earl used to sit together and play side by side, and Earl had a tendency to go completely by jazz more so, and I was the boogie woogie king. So I liked Gina, you know, I liked the boogie woogie players. And
you know how Earl got started on piano though?
yeah, well, he was there playing on the bass first, and Dwight Mitchell, which was could play more than both of us put together, helped us out. And then after I came to Motown, Earl came later after I resigned and went with Jackie Wilson.
Well, the first time I met Earl, is a place down the street from here, in Ecorse on 12th Street in Visiga, called the Visiga Inn. They used to have jam sessions in there every Saturday. That's where any big time jazz musician that came to town Saturday early, that's where they be. And Earl came in there. I was working the gig there, and Earl came and sat in. It was big B3 organ there. He sat in, and I was playing the drums in, and he kind of took a liking to my playing, so he came back about 3 or 4 other times, and played. And then next thing I know, and a few years later, I was on the road working with Marvin Gaye, in and out of town. And in 1964, Earl walked up to me and said, man, because we wasn't making a lot of money with Marvin, say, man, why don't you quit starving with Marvin and come go around the world with Earl? And 3 weeks later, I was on my way to London with Earl Van Dyke. And from 64 up till when he passed, I think Earl and I was 2 musicians that had been together longer than any other 2 musicians in the city. I was working with him half of my life.
I'm often asked, how did they produce the Motown sound? What is the Motown sound? And I found out a lot of unique things by standing around watching them produce. And Robert White and Eddie Willis had a way of putting the guitar on a track that you would wonder, how did they do it? And it's hard to get musicians to emulate it. Robert and Eddie would chank, but they chanked on different rhythms. And I can't get anyone to do it. You can write it on paper, but you can't make anyone feel the way that they worked together. And I recently had a chance to reproduce some of my tracks for live performances, and the musicians just could not get it the way that, I think it's mainly because Robert White played with his thumb as opposed to a pick. He was proud of his thumbnail. And if you watched him when he played, he would use just that nail to make beautiful chords or just beautiful chanks. And he would go up on his guitar where other musicians I noticed would go down. And it was so unique, and he was so quiet. He was like a guru.